guys, I am here with my good friend Jason McKenzie, and today's topic is going to be
race.
I'll let you jump into it. Go.
Jumping where though? Like what? Where
Go
should
ahead.
we start?
This one was your topic also, so
I think we kind of stumbled across it. We were just discussing.
yeah, we just talk about stuff.
Yeah, we just talk about random things. We were discussing like the black culture in essence.
Okay,
and
this is the one where you were saying we probably talked about
that not all quote unquote black people assimilate into this black culture because some of our cultures are so different that we kind of skipped some of what your families went through history-wise.
Right, because you're West Indian.
Yeah.
My family is of American descent. My grandparents, all my grandparents were born in the States. My mother's grandparents were all born in the States. Like my mom likes to say she's like 5th generation free, 6th generation free. So I am a descendant of slavery. On my father's side of the family though, he has Jamaican grandparents from both of his parents. I want to say like both of his grandfathers are Jamaican or a grandfather and a grandmother. I don't really know. But so the lineage disperses a little bit on that side. But all I know is American culture. I know not a thing about Jamaica. Except I live in Jamaica, Queens. Southside.
And I think what we were saying, it's like, I don't know anything about Southern black culture. I've never had a collard green in my life.
Out.
I don't even know what a collard green looks like.
It looks like spinach, bro.
I'm not too fond of what spinach looks like either, but I don't know what a grit is.
I got some in the cabinet. I got you on what grits look like, and I can definitely handle that one for you. But, like, I get it. You weren't raised with the same stories that I was raised with. Yeah. Whereas I wasn't raised with the island stories. Like, I don't have that.
Or at least not firsthand. Like,
okay.
I would say we were still raised with the same stories. Like, I still know the stories of Rosa Parks and of, like, the civil rights struggle. But I feel like...
Right, you didn't get the first-hand stories of this is what I lived through.
Exactly. Like,
I got those stories.
You could potentially have family members that were on, like, part of the Freedom Riders and stuff like that. That is not a portion of, like, my family history. Mm-hmm. So... it's almost, I think what Carly and I were discussing, and when she watches, it's going to be annoying because she doesn't agree with me. What Carly and I were discussing was the fact that, in my mind, when people come to black people and say that we don't support each other, like as a unilateral black person, I kind of understand why, because we don't connect on the same levels as everybody else. Like, where I see the disconnect, and I understand that we need to, in order to strengthen ourselves now, like, is when you go up to a white person and ask them what they are. They don't say white.
Right.
They say Italian, Irish, or whatever, like, actual ethnicity they are. Mm-hmm. It's only us that they kind of force group to identify by race. And then when we don't, like, support each other to the same levels of an ethnicity, they say, oh, look, black people don't even support each other. But not all white people like each other either. So, like, that is, I think that's where, to me, I kind of see it in a different view. I understand that we don't, but I think the media, in a sense, uses it to spin it back on us. Like, they force group us, and then they tell us that we don't support the forced grouping that they put us in. Because the segments within the black culture, and like I said, I can speak on the West Indian side because I'm around more West Indian folks. Guyanese people support Guyanese people. I've worked places and people have picked up on my accent that I'm Guyanese, and they've automatically had like a better, like an affinity for me over my coworkers. Like, I had a Guyanese security guard at T-Mobile when I was working there. And just to show you, like, for example, as soon as he figured out I was Guyanese, which was because I had a Guyanese background on my phone, and he saw it, the security guard sometimes, like when people came in asking questions about buying something or whatnot, he can funnel the people where he wants to. And or not where he wants to, but he has a choice in where to funnel them. And he would funnel certain people to me, believing that, okay, let me help Jason out, because Jason is my countryman, essentially. So that's why, like, when I look at it, I see that there is support within the ethnicity because even living in Alma, with the amount of Haitian people I live around, you can see the excitement when they see another successful Haitian person or anyone like when they share the same nationality. I still think it does cross to an extent in race because like I've worked places like when I worked at the bank, like the black business banker there was like, wow, you're a young black man with a master's degree. Like she thought I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I think that was due to the fact that we were both the same race. Okay. But like
in a predominantly white environment.
Yes.
Right? I think that may have played the difference.
Yes. And you know at that point you bring up might be the thing because when you're put in a predominantly like when you're put in a predominantly black environment, we then default back down to the segments. So it's not that we don't support each other. It's just that we don't self-identify first as black.
Understandably so.
Then like Guyanese, because culturally, the first things I remember in life are Guyanese food, Guyanese music. So I identify as Guyanese first. I am black because I know, like we were discussing earlier, if I walk down the street to the white cop, if he's coming up on us, there's no difference between me and you at that level. But I think that's where the support thing.
Right. But I understand what she was saying because as an American, as an African American, we can see where, like I had a conversation with my girl, Nay, where we're young entrepreneurs. We are young people that have these hustles. Like we have ventures that we are on with, you know, whether it be a product or service or a trade. And we'll get like support from strangers per se, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the race, because a lot of strangers that I get support from, of course, look like me, are other black people. But in terms of like the black people that we know, whereas the black people, well, the West Indians that you know, once they know that you're West Indian, or even the West. So then my question to you is, your closer family and friends, do they also support you? Do they hold that whole countryman thing?
Yes.
Still is true.
And I think it's still true. I think where you're reaching to, and it's something that I talked to with my boy Finesse, which is a personal trainer. And he broke off on his own, started doing his own personal training.
Okay.
He's who I work out with. Like, me and him have always had discussions that for some unknown reason, like your friends believe that you should just work for free. So that might be like more of a friend thing.
Okay.
Than I think maybe a race thing. Because I've come across that myself. Like, the toughest people for me to reach out to in terms of, like, oh, I need your help doing something. Like, I feel like when someone who doesn't know me that well needs my help to do something, they will actually sometimes offer to pay me. Like, because, I mean, I've helped people with, like, little, like, stuff like rewording contracts or, like, minor business plan stuff without doing anything. And then one of Eric's people, Philadelphia, that he introduced me to, was very avid about, look, I need your help, but I am going to, like, support you. I'm going to pay you.
Right.
And he was a black man. I think it was just the concept of,
you're a stranger to me, so you're not going to do me a favor.
Yeah. I think, like, your friends just automatically feel that they should either automatically get a discount because they're your friends, or automatically get free work. My big thing with the race, even with the support and whatnot, has a lot to do with that the media kind of force groups us and then tells us that we don't support each other. I feel it's almost like a trick to try and convince us that we are somehow weaker than we actually are. That, I think, was the point I was trying to get across in my conversation to Carly. Like, it's not that the support isn't there. Like, no one ever steps outside the box and says, there is a black culture now, but we are building it currently.
Well, that's for maybe West Indians, because it's not that we're building black culture now.
I think...
my family's always been a part of black culture.
No, but I think, like, there's a new hybrid of it, like bringing in all the immigrants that came to the country in this time frame. Like, it's almost that there's so much, like, first generation, like Americans that have just really assimilated into it. Because I think a lot of my friends are first generation Americans. Like if I look at a lot of my friends, they're first generation Americans, first generation to graduate college, and all of that stuff. So now we are assimilating into your already existing culture.
You've already had a culture to identify with, and now that you're in this country, you're not just identifying with whatever
that culture
country that you're from. You're now identifying with American culture.
And it's sort of like now we plus you have to now craft this new culture. And that's why when people are like, okay, there may or may not be support, not before, but after all that we have gone through in the last 20 to 30 years, right? Now I have support for you in general because
you've had time to go through it on your own.
Yeah, because if you think about it, someone of my age with my background, I don't have any firsthand interaction with the fear of going down the street and thinking I'll be shot just because I was black. Like those stories didn't exist in my family dynamic. But now I'm firsthand living it. So now when I have kids and you have kids, they're still being taught the Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King thing in school, but now they're hearing firsthand stories of Jason got pulled over and the first question that they asked him when they came into the car was, how did you afford this car? Like, excuse me? Do you ask every person that you pull over how they afford the car when you stop them? Like, that's so to me, I think that is where I see the culture is now growing. Because now since I'm experiencing it firsthand, now I'm a little bit more, because I think have not experienced it firsthand, I can read about.
Well, I guess it's growing for you, not for me.
Yeah, but
because that's always been the reality.
That's always,
However, since we're living that same reality, I think it is fair to say that the culture is expanding in a different way because there are so many more first generation blacks, if you will.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. It's a new dynamic because so would you say that you had, or would you say that you had or still possibly have some type of pushback from being identified as black? Or do you just, because I get that you can kind of see yourself as black now because you've been here long enough. But when you say that you can kind of see it firsthand, what about the history of blacks in America? What is that for you? Does it mean anything for you, or is it just the current?
I still understand the history, but I may have come from a different dynamic history-wise because when I first came to the country, like if I was that old, I was young. When I first started going to school here, my parents sent me to a school in Brooklyn called St. Mark's, which was really big on teaching black history. Like it was almost purely a black school. I think the majority of them were West Indian in general, but it was like one of those schools where you could literally be beat by the teacher in school. Like, there was no oh, the teacher can only scream at you. No, you literally had to hold your hand out and get hit with the yardstick if you did some wrong shit. But like, for like our field days, like our groupings or teams for field day were broken up into like the Shirley Chisholm team and the Marcus Garvey team, and so like they forced you to learn some of this stuff. So I know where I got grounded in it. And I know that my parents went the distance of, like, there were these, like, small little books that they would buy me, like, maybe, like, 2-3 inches.
Children books.
No, they weren't, like, children books, but they were just, like, really fine, like, spine books with, like, really tiny writing. Because by that time, I was, like, in, like, 3rd or 4th grade. So not, like, really, really children books. But they would cover people of African-American people from history. So, like, my parents forced me to understand that. But what I wonder, when we question the lack of support or the lack of understanding of what's going on, did everyone else's parents force them to understand that? Like, I see that my parents took steps
to assimilate you to what people viewed you
to
as.
show me, like, what Black history is, period. I don't know if everybody else did the same thing.
Do you know any other friends who've had their parents do that?
I was honestly not something I've ever discussed. The only time it really came up was at one point. Like I've never discussed it with somebody else who was West Indian, because I don't readily identify as Black first. We usually end up on the topic,
right?
And then, so I end up usually speaking to people who are much more well versed in Black history than I am. So I've never broached the topic with another West Indian person.
That'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah, and like what makes me wonder, like I came here when I was really young, because I came here when I was 30. What about the people who came at 15 or 16? Like then they really missed a chunk. Because if
my friend Kelly came over, she was like 14, 15.
Yeah, so then they haven't even, like they've even missed some of the schooling.
Right.
Because I don't know what level of Black history is taught
in high school.
Yeah.
Not much, I can tell you that. Well, I went to an all-girls Catholic high school where we were, like, one of the funny stories I like to tell about my high school experience, I was, after junior high elementary school, which was a Black school, I went to a predominantly white high school, and then again went to a predominantly white college. But in high school, I could say I was in, like, U.S. history class. I had to be a junior. And the way the teacher had the class set up was like a U shape, but nobody sat like in the chairs by like the lockers. We always just sat like on the side. So we're sitting in the class, and I sat like in the front of the, the side to the left of the teacher. So I'm like, paying attention, not paying attention. I don't fucking know. And we're talking about something, and for some reason, she just comments like, you're tan, like, you're tan. Like, you've been tanning? Like, where do you go that they let you tan so much? And then I guess she actually looked at whose legs they were, and she was just like, oh. Because they were obviously my legs. And she was just like, oh. I'm like, yeah, I can't say I was tanning. I'm just kind of, that's just how they are. And so it's just like, I know I'm not your only Black student. I know she wasn't being malicious about it, but it's just like, to be, like, I'm being the only Black kid in the class, or one of two, isn't like, I'm not a stranger to that. But when you can, no, she wasn't ever going to ask, what is your heritage? Where are your parents from? What is your family history? Are you American? Even though this is a U.S. history class, like, there was no conversation of, well, and in hindsight, like, I guess I can say I'm pretty glad she didn't just single me out and be like in the middle of teaching about, civil rights movement, So, have you heard any stories from, your people about civil rights? Talk to the class of white kids.
And I think to a point that you just mentioned, and you had mentioned a little bit earlier too, that probably plays a role in it. Because when I went to Elmont, one thing that Elmont is famous for, because it has been in national newspapers for it, is the diversity within the school itself. Like, in the sense that it is a predominantly Black school. But I think at one point in time while I was there, they actually brought NBC to the school to cover the fact that we had so many different races of people, so many different ethnicities of people within that one school. So, like you said, that forces us to, like, re-segment, because we all look the same as far as we're concerned. So now, if you bring an immigrant's child into that mix, where we all look the same in this town regardless, and now I'm re-segmenting myself, or another very interesting point, which I guess is not a dynamic for someone who's a Southern Black person. There's neighborhoods within New York where the culture reigns supreme because all the people are from that same culture. So, like, but I don't know if there's no, like, Little South or New York. So I can understand why, like, to you guys, it doesn't seem like a natural reaction, because there's parts of, like by Richmond Hill, where they jokingly say there's more Guyanese people in Richmond Hill than there is in Guyana. Like, and I think at the rate people are moving from Guyana to here might actually be close to true. Right. But, like, it's just like, once you go there again, we once again, like, re-identify back to that. And then the people who are coming there directly have been in the country even less time than me.
Okay.
So I think it goes back to exactly what you were saying. Like, after they experience firsthand, because you also have to remember a lot of like the islands and I don't think the racism is as real white to black as it is here. Like, strangely enough, I think the United States might be one of the most racist countries left in the world, where there's like a serious segment and nervousness in discussing race.
Okay.
Because
I wouldn't know. I'm not really familiar with.
Because even when I interact with, like when I went to training and I hung out with some people from like Poland and Germany, and like the whole concept of me being a different race didn't even seem to ever, like, there was no awkward, like, I've had awkward moments in the United States with American people where we're having a conversation and they don't know how to discuss something because, like, America has this, like, past.
Okay.
Like, when I was talking to my Polish friend that I just recently met, he's sitting there playing Ja Rule songs, singing right along with the song, not batting an eye, that, like, not even factoring in. Because I honestly can't even remember if he said the N-word or not. I don't believe so. But not, like, it didn't seem like something he had to consciously think about. Right. Whereas, you know, when you're sometimes around your white American friends, you can tell that
are you forcing this? Is this really the playlist that you play with your black friends, or is this really just genuinely interested?
Or even if, like, they like the music, like, they're hesitant to sing along because it's not how they sing along in their house. So they're like,
Can you hear me? Okay. Is it loud?
And to me, I only see that interaction here because when you leave the country, it doesn't seem to be that pressing of an issue. I haven't gone to that many different parts of the world, to be completely honest. But, like, in the Caribbean, there is no more, like, what race are you, or this is a white person, and this is a black person. Maybe because we so vastly outnumber them everywhere else.
Okay.
Than here. Because another interesting race...
In terms of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Why don't you take me on a wild ride?